yourself if you need to.
Sounds good.
Okay, so just to start, just your full name, your position, and your organization.
Hi, I'm Julianna Greenberg. I'm the president of Food Recovery Network. And was there something else you want?
I mean, you can just go into detail a little bit about what Food Recovery Network does.
Yeah, so basically what Food Recovery Network does is we have the mission of fighting waste and feeding people. So we do that on this campus specifically by going into the dining halls at night after they close. And we basically take the food that they have prepared but didn't serve, and we put it into our own containers and take it to a local shelter. And we also work with concessions at football and basketball games, as well as the campus catering kitchen, and a couple of the places in the Stamp Food Court.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I have volunteered at the South Campus Dining Hall on a few occasions, so I know a bit about the process as far as packaging goes.
Yeah.
But how does it go after that? How do you guys partner with shelters and get deliveries over and stuff?
So basically how we go from the dining hall to the shelter, we work with one group specifically called the Christian Life Center. And they run a larger food distribution program. So they actually distribute close to 1,000 pounds of food every night, and we supply about 500 of those. So they work with Whole Foods down on Route 1 as well, and a couple of food trucks in the area too. And so we used to have a shuttle provided by Dots, but due to recent budget cuts, we've had to switch over to volunteer drivers. So basically what happens is we have 3 recoveries every night from South Campus Diner, North Campus Diner, and 251. So South and North Campus Diner both happen at around midnight, and so that's too late to bring the food over to the shelter at that time because no one will be awake. But 251 happens at 8:30, and so what happens is after the 251 recovery, we go and pick up the food that was recovered last night at North and South Campus Diner that has been frozen overnight to maintain its food safety. And we have our volunteer drivers load up their cars, and we drive over to the Christian Life Center, which is about 15 minutes away in Riverdale, Maryland. Okay. And so we either put it in their freezers that they have there, or we give it to them in person, and then they can go out later that night and distribute it to the community members.
Okay, so has this partnership been around for a long time?
Mm-hmm. So Food Recovery Network started in 2011 here on campus, and now we're a national nonprofit, which is super cool. That we're the flagship chapter. And we've been involved with the Christian Life Center since day one. They were the first group we partnered with. Okay. We've worked with other groups, but they have come and gone, and the Christian Life Center has been with us the whole time, which has been really great.
Okay, was there anything specific about that center that really kind of matches your values?
Well, one of the nice things about them is they actually distribute to 10 different organizations. So it's a huge bang for your buck type of thing. Is they already have this infrastructure in place because they run a larger food distribution program. And so they have their own volunteers. So it's not just the college kids having to go out and I'm sure you know that only upperclassmen basically have cars now. And so most of the students on campus can't drive. And so we're able to get people who are in the real world to help us distribute the food. Okay. But yeah, they work with Meals on Wheels College Park. They work with Bread for the City, DC. They work with some senior community centers in Riverdale and in College Park. They work with some women and children's shelters. They work with a bunch of great people.
Okay, so how do you guys, where do you get your funding from, and how much do you rely on funding? Is it entirely fundraising?
So we get most of our funding through the SGA. So as a SGA-recognized club, we are able to request about $1,500 every month for our general expenses. Okay. And we have to submit an itemized budget to them. And we use $1,500 a month from all of that money for the pans and the lids that we package the food into to bring to the shelter.
Okay, so if you guys were to kind of do additional programs or get more funding, do you see yourself expanding into other areas possibly?
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal. So right now we recover every weeknight from 251, 3 nights a week from North, and 4 nights a week from South. And really, we'd like to recover 7 nights a week from all 3, right? Mm-hmm. And so the ultimate goal is that we're able to fundraise more, if we're able to find grant money and stuff like that, then we'd like to be able to expand out and have the resources to recover all of our food waste on campus, not just on specific nights.
Yeah. How could you see yourself, guys, or how could you see yourself kind of developing more fundraising or finding more guys and girls to kind of join?
Yeah. So one of the big things that we've been pushing kind of this semester that's really starting to hopefully gain some traction next year is we have a fundraising committee, which we've never had before. Okay. And so basically what that committee does is they are just looking for food grants for people who are working in food security, food waste, environmental problems with homelessness and hunger, anything that could possibly be under our umbrella. And we're starting to apply for those grants.
Okay.
Because previously we relied on this continuous funding from SDA, and now we're kind of like, well, we clearly need more money if we want to do everything. So we're going to have to go for those one-off, like $10,000 grants that we can use over 2 years to help expand or something like that.
Okay. How do you generally find volunteers or members on campus, like through the First Look Fair and stuff?
Yeah, so we get a lot of individual volunteers from the First Look Fair. But one of the things that we mostly rely on is other groups. So we work with a bunch of other campus groups. We work with like APO, we work with the Muslim Students Association, we work with the Civicus Living and Learning Community, and they, as part of the requirements for their group, have to do community service.
Okay.
And so they send us like 5 volunteers every week. And so we're able to have this consistent stream of volunteers on certain nights of the week from other groups. But then on other nights, we do get a lot of our volunteers from people who join our listserv on the First Look Fair, friends of the people who are leading the recoveries, all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah, that's why I didn't even realize I'm wearing the DEM shirt.
DEM also volunteers.
Yeah, that's why I've been there on a few occasions.
Yeah.
So how do you guys, I know you said for volunteers for like the kitchen, but for getting like those committees or fundraising and getting, like e-board stuff, are those people that have generally been volunteers and worked their way up? Yeah,
so that's probably the most common place that we get people from, is people who, like you, have volunteered at a couple of recoveries, and they are just like really into the mission, they like the work, and they just want to be able to get more involved. Obviously, there's some like, you want to have like leadership experience in your resume and stuff like that, and so it's the kind of thing that if people realize that this is something they like, then they're able to kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Okay. So yeah, you did a good job covering, everything that food recovery does. So now I kind of want to take a broader look at things. So just like hunger and food insecurity as an issue in general. Could you describe some of the things, like the local issues that people face?
Yeah, so one of the big things that people don't talk about is food insecurity on our own campus. And so I think something like 30% of students at UMD said that they were either sometimes or often food insecure. And so the way we think about food insecurity is just not knowing where your next meal comes from, basically. And so you don't know if you're going to be able to have dinner, and if you are, like, you don't know where you're going to get it. And so there's a lot of food insecurity on our campus because cost of living is really high here, cost of transportation is really high, and so something has to give, kind of. And in our area, in the DC area, there is a huge food insecurity problem as well for those similar reasons. DC is one of the most expensive cities to live in the country. And so people who want to be able to work in this area and live in this area or don't have an option to leave often face some sort of food insecurity.
Yeah, I actually, we talked to multiple people. So one other person I talked to was Beverly Wheeler. She's the director at DC Hunger Solutions. They're part of the larger FRAC nonprofit. And they said, like, especially when it comes to college students too, like food itself is not, like, it's abundant. It's just the access to it where people really find barriers.
Yeah, and that's something that we're working towards. Like, obviously on campus, if we're able to recover 500 pounds of food a night, we have plenty of food. Like, there's enough food for everyone on this campus to eat easily. And clearly our community members as well. But it's just, people can't, there are those barriers to getting it.
Yeah, so could you maybe elaborate on a little bit around, besides college students, like in the local PG County area, what kind of obstacles they face? Yeah, so the biggest obstacle is always money.
So PG County is the poorest county in Maryland, which is one of the richest states in the United States. But and so there are also food deserts. So in wards 7 and 8 in DC, which are the poorest wards in DC, and the most African American concentrated wards in DC, there is 2 supermarkets now to feed over 10,000 people in the entire, like all of those 2 wards.
Yeah.
And most of those places are not, and one of them is not on a bus route, which means that if you don't have a car, you can't get it. You have to walk to go get your food, which is just not always feasible if you are an elderly person, if you're sick, if you're young, like a child. You can't go and carry groceries for your family, however many miles it is to get to the grocery store that's supposed to serve you. And then when you get to those grocery stores, there's no guarantee that the food that they have is going to be good food, that it's going to be good for you, that it's going to taste good, that it's still going to be even good to eat. And so the food is just not distributed correctly. Like, if you go down into the richer parts of DC, there's a Whole Foods in every corner, right? Like, you can get, like, the nice stuff really easily.
So yeah, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but just lastly, kind of very vague question: how do you think How do you think are like some of the best issues to, combat? And what do you think you could see people doing to combat food insecurity in the future?
Yeah, I guess in our area, because food deserts are such a big issue in parts of DC, one of the best things that you can do on like a policy level, it feels like to me, someone who's not involved in policy, is to work to get those grocery stores in your area and to get grocery stores that are accessible for you. Like if you are like someone who's living paycheck to paycheck, you're probably not going to shop at Whole Foods. Like it's too expensive, and so getting affordable supermarkets that can like give you those fresh ingredients or healthy ingredients is really important. One really cool thing that I think DC Ingredients is doing is if you have WIC, which is like food stamps, you can go and use that at farmers markets in the area, and so you're able to use funding from the state to get that fresh food that you're not able to get from your like corner store or whatever.
Yeah, they talked about that a bit when we were talking about DC Hunger Solutions. It seems like a great idea to get more like, like you said, fresh produce, because those are the big things that they're usually lacking.
Yeah.
So I mean that's all I really have. If there's anything else you want to elaborate on, or you feel like you want to give food recovery another shout out.
Yeah, come join Food Recovery Network. We always need more volunteers.
Okay.
So.